second and then we'll go live. All right, we're now streaming on YouTube and I'll bring the audience members in. All right, you're good to go.
Very well. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Michael Marnick, and this is I'm the chair of the Zoning Board of Appeals of the Town of Orleans, and this is a regular meeting that was duly noticed and filed with the town clerk on April 30th. We have present with us a quorum consisting of Lynette Colt, Gerald Mulligan, Bruce Taub, George Waugh, and myself. Let me see. Oh, of course. And Emily Van Giesen is also in attendance, and Matthew Cole. So we have a quorum. Also present is the building commissioner of the town of Orleans, Thomas Evers, and the board secretary, Stacy Faber. We have, ladies and gentlemen, we have one case to consider, and that is case number 2153. This is the application of MA28 Solar Project 2020 LLC. The property is located at 70 Route 28, Orleans, map 34, parcel 85. I think that may also be known as 78 Eldridge Parkway. The applicant seeks a special permit because there's work being done in a residential district exceeding 4,000 square feet, as well as for a variance as set forth in General Laws, Chapter 40, Section 10, a commercial use in a residential district under Orleans zoning bylaw 164-13. And the work that's proposed to be done, according to the notices published, was to construct a 425 kilowatt photovoltaic solar energy generating canopy over the parking lot. Is there any member present who has communicated with the applicant or any of the applicant's agents, which ought to be disclosed to the zoning board colleagues or the public, or would otherwise constitute a conflict of interest? I hear no positive response. Therefore, I declare that the members of the board present are indifferent and impartial. Who is to let the record reflect that there was a correspondence received, email correspondence received by the board on May 17th, which has been circulated to the board and will be received as part of the application. The author being Josh Burdett, the project development manager, who are we to hear from Mr. Burdett tonight?
Yes. Hi, this is Josh Burdett. Yeah, I have a presentation prepared.
Are you going to present for the applicant?
Yes, sir.
Why don't you proceed then?
Okay, very well. Thank you, Mr. Marnick. See if I can grab screen share here. Let's see. Okay. How's that? Can you folks see the presentation?
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, very good. Well, good evening. Yes, my name is Josh Burdett. I'm with Distributed Solar Development, or DSD for short. We are the developers for the Nauset Middle School Solar Project, also known as the MA28 Solar Project, and DSD is the owner of the LLC applicant that was previously read earlier. Just a point of clarification there. And I heard as I was coming in too some talk about the Brewster Captain's Golf Course, and I thought that was great. That is our project. That's my project. And so I'm delighted to hear some positive feedback on that effort. So hopefully we can do the same for the town of Orleans here. All right. So just by way of introduction, also we have on the line Greg Wissink, who is part of Tetra Tech, and they are our environmental engineering and consulting firm that we've been working with. You probably saw in your application package there are civil design sheets as well as the stormwater management plan that was prepared by that firm. So who is DSD? What do we do? We're actually a solar development company that is owned by BlackRock, and the largest asset management company in the world. And so we have that kind of scale behind our efforts. We specialize in turnkey photovoltaic solutions for our customers, and that just meaning that we provide sort of a customized approach all the way from origination through to the development process, through the construction process, and also during the operations and management process. And so we have a holistic portfolio approach to our projects. So that ownership is something that we take. We're not just a build it and run kind of company. We really take pride in customizing these solutions to our customers' needs. And so we have a national scope. We have over 100 energy experts that work on our team, from the East Coast to the Midwest to the West Coast. We have a really good relationship with the Cape and Vineyard Electric Cooperative, CVEC for short, and we have won 2 rounds of proposals from them, the round 4 proposal and the round 5 proposal, which this project is a part of. We have over 12 megawatts of solar that's around the Commonwealth right now, and 23 megawatts of solar that's in development throughout the Cape, in Brewster and Sandwich, Harwich, Mashpee, Yarmouth, as well as this project in Orleans. And we have several projects in construction around the Cape right now, as was mentioned earlier with the Brewster project. So we're really pleased with that. There's actually one also at the Brewster driving range that is finishing up construction right now. And so neighboring towns with several projects, Sandwich Police Department and one of the Harwich high schools have also installations. So diving into the project here, this is based on a request for a proposal from CVEC in conjunction with the town of about fall 2019 in that round 5 effort that I alluded to earlier. This is a 425 kilowatt AC system and PV system, which is a dual slope canopy system. We can get into more of that a little bit later. This also has a 536 kilowatt AC energy storage system associated with it. This project encompasses about 2 acres of the property, and the use is that the solar energy that's collected from the PV system itself, from the canopy in the bus parking lot to the south there of the school, is behind the meter, and so it goes into the middle school to offset the electrical consumption of the school. The battery system actually stores energy for peak demand, so there's an incentive that the middle school won't necessarily be drawing from the grid but can draw from their own personal battery storage system at times where the demand is high on the grid. And the energy generated from the PV at off demand hours. So if the middle school, say over the summer, isn't using as much electricity as the system is giving off, then that electricity can be filtered back into the grid in a net metering effort that, and then the school would receive credit for that energy going into the grid. And so there's three kind of ways that that energy is being used. However, that mostly is being used directly by the school itself, and the school, the regional school district, will be receiving compensation via a power purchase agreement with CVEC for the energy generated at the school. And there's a 20+ year project lease associated with this project. I believe the lease agreement is a 20-year with a 5-year option. So where have we been? Where are we going? We have been through the formal site plan review already with the town site plan review staff, and that was approved previously. Also gone through the architectural review committee for the aesthetics of the project. The condition being through that review that we paint the canopy, the paintable portions of the canopy, kind of a charcoal gray color. And so we've taken that condition into consideration and received that approval. We're here tonight for our special use associated with the residential district, and also potentially a variance as requested by the town that might be considered here tonight for a potential commercial use within a residential district. Also, we're in direct communication with Eversource and the school district to hash out the finalizations of the electrical design, the intricacies of the actual equipment to be installed, the metering and all that kind of stuff, as well as the economics with the school district. And we will then seek a town building permit after all of those details are ironed out. So just additional information on the background. We had that SPR meeting on March 17th, which we were approved for. We received input from the building department, the health department, conservation, planning, fire and water, and highway departments. We had some considerations here, which were maintaining site access. There's some lighting that's proposed on this site that is compliant with Chapter 122 of the code. We performed a swept path analysis for the fire department and their largest truck that needed access to the school site. So we demonstrated that this proposed use would maintain that existing emergency vehicle access. We had a system design around the existing conditions. We planted all of this is a unique design. We've never done this before, being that this is a 10 module system on a single foundational frame. And so we've planted all of these foundations within the existing center median of the parking lot, and to kind of stay away from all of the subsurface utilities that are at this site, as well as maintaining that access through a kind of an oddly shaped parking lot. We have a system design around, like I said, subsurface utility. There is a Title V nitrate remediation system subsurface at the site, and which is monitored by DEP. And so we've received their sign off for this proposal. Stormwater considerations and calculations were provided at the site plan review committee as well, and for this purpose as well. The transformer that will be utilized is going to be the existing transformer at the site. Will potentially have to be upgraded by Eversource, the utility company. And the battery energy storage system will be surrounded by fencing. There's not currently fencing at the transformer to the north side of the middle school now. So we would install new fencing around that electrical equipment, as well as fencing around the battery energy storage equipment. We don't want any kids interfering with the electrical equipment. And we are in further coordination, like I mentioned earlier, with the fire department for finalizing the Eversource equipment that's going to be listed on the site. Okay, so why are we here tonight? Let's get into the applicability. We're on map 34, parcel 85, which is the Nauset Middle School property, regional middle school property, and specifically the canopy is located on the southern parking lot, which is utilized by the school buses. It is zoned as a residence in the R, and solar is not listed in the code specifically being as a right of use or during the special permit. So this was tripped by the fourth point here, that the canopy is over 32,000 square feet, and the pad's another 693, which exceeds the 4,000 square foot criteria listed in the code within the residence district. Backtracking a little bit, the site's not located in an overlay district or a protection district or an environmental sensitive area, and the proposed structures meet the setback requirements, which are listed in table 1 in the narrative that was provided for this application. And as Mr. Warnick mentioned earlier, there was an email submission by me to the board, and which considered this last point this week, that we received Eversource approval for the behind the meter configuration in real time. And so when we submitted the original application package, that was not the case. They were still doing their engineering due diligence. And so that has been a change that from the original submission package. And so now we have a behind the meter configuration that's approved, and we're curious to hear your feedback as to see whether the board considers this a municipal use instead of a commercial use, being that the power is going directly into the school.
Mr. Burdett, that was never really in question. The power was always going to be used by the middle school, wasn't it?
No, actually, there was an option for a front of the meter configuration that Eversource was potentially going to push us to. The original request for proposal and the original design had everything behind the meter like we had proposed it originally, like you're saying, and so directly power into the school. However, there was some engineering back and forth that came from Eversource during this whole communication process of months now, and there was some speculation that they were going to make us go front of the meter, aka directly into the local grid, instead of tying into the middle school, and we would have had to restructure our contracts and all that kind of stuff. And so we fought that issue, and they came back and said that, okay, your engineering design makes sense. And so there was some ambiguity there that we had to straighten out.
So that makes your work almost completely, at least substantially, an accessory use for the educational purpose. Is that right?
I would believe that's correct.
Well, we needed that kind of evidence, and that's why I responded to you the way I did. Let the record reflect that in October, we at the request of the Nauset Regional School District, we allowed the establishment of propane tanks for the purpose of fueling the school buses to be accessory to the educational use of the Nauset Regional Middle School. And the board considered, therefore, that was an accessory use to the educational use, and the zoning bylaw could not apply to the use under the provisions of the exemptions in General Laws, Chapter 48, Section 3. Is that what you're suggesting now? Mr. Burdette, so we don't need to, that the zoning board needn't consider, say, that 4,000-foot cap, which would absolutely be practically absurd when we consider the coverages already of the building, of the town owned, on the school, on the land owned by the town of Orleans. So are you suggesting that the board adopt the exemption?
Well, I guess I have 2 points of clarity. I was of the understanding that just according to the bylaw that we would have, because of the coverage area, that automatically tripped the need for a special permit. And then I think separately from that was the use of the project and the need for a variance. Is that correct, or am I slightly off base here?
I was really thinking that it was the special permit, not a variance, was the proper relief that you were originally looking for.
Marna, could I intervene briefly for a matter of some concern?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Oftentimes in these meetings, you decide who are the 5 who will decide this case. And I would like to not be among them, though I haven't, quote unquote, visited the project or anything like that. I have very strong feelings about BlackRock, which may have nothing to do with this, but is the world's largest asset holder, as was disclosed to us by the presenter. As recently as 2019, BlackRock received criticism for the impact of its holdings. It's counted among the top 3 shareholders in every oil super major except Total. And it's among the top 10 shareholders of 7 of the 10 largest coal producers. Under these circumstances, I would be prejudiced against providing support. I am, as some may know, involved in this investment activities elsewhere. And that would make me an inappropriate voter on this case. That said, I would hope I didn't have to excuse myself and that I was able to continue to participate and indeed to comment. I'm complete, sir. Thank you.
Very well. Then your suggestion that it would be inappropriate for you to consider this application is granted. The following shall be the members to vote on this application. Myself, Ms. Eckholt, Mr. Cole, Mr. Waugh, and Mr. Mulligan. Now, are there any questions by any members of the board of Mr. Burdette?
Mr. Chairman, I just have a question, and I'm confused as to the cash flow here, how money flows. How does the LLC, if the power goes all to the middle school and either used by the school or used to charge the batteries, how does the LLC get compensated?
So,
Yep.
I can answer that. So the power purchase agreement is actually with the Cape and Vineyard Electric Cooperative and the LLC. And so the LLC receives compensation. The DSD LLC, the project LLC, receives compensation from the incentive program, the SMART incentive program in Massachusetts, and the savings that are associated with the energy generation of the site. Actually, the on-bill savings are actually negotiated from CVEC and go straight to the school district.
I don't know, that's not relevant to us, but the savings, what the savings would be, the solar, would the energy generated here be per kilowatt hour cheaper or more expensive than the average on the Cape and Electric?
Well, it's generated on site so that essentially you don't have to draw from the grid, right? So your utility bill goes down,
Right.
that you're drawing from the grid, which is on bill savings. And so you receive those on bill savings by having a project like this in that property.
It's a savings to the school district,
Yes.
but the utility is actually paying more per kilowatt hour, aren't they, for this electricity?
The utility, maybe, I don't particularly know the ins and outs of the contract with the utility.
So does it, so there's no, the school gets its credit for the power generated, and there's no funds flowing from the town to the LLC. It's through the energy compact.
That's correct.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Ms. Eckel, do you have any questions?
No, I do not.
Very well. Mr. Cole, do you have any questions?
I've got a couple questions. So I'm going to go back to Mr. Mulligan's questions. And how is the school or the how is the school funding the project? How do the dollars flow from the school for the electricity they're receiving from this? Or are they essentially still paying their normal utility bill, and it just so happens that the generation is happening in their parking lot instead of offsite?
Yeah, the latter. The school is not fronting dollars, and I think Jim's on. Maybe Jim could speak to a little bit of this too.
The chair, if that's okay.
Yes, please.
I'm Jim Nowak. I'm the Assistant Director of Finance and Operations for the Nauset School District. And the way we benefit from it, we don't pay anything up front. It all comes back to that power purchase agreement and through CVAC. The town also uses CVAC from an earlier project for landfill. So in the end, we expect to be paying about 8 cents a kilowatt instead of what we're paying now, about 18 to 19 cents a kilowatt. The battery backup system, which I'm very excited about again, because we get to go behind the meter and we should pick up more savings from that. And we get the credits from the SMART program back into the school. So our benefits is there's no money up front. We lower our electric bills significantly, more than half, and we get some credits back. So that's how it affects the school system. It reduces our costs for running this school.
Thank you. That's very helpful in understanding what my question is really driving at. One question about the batteries. Who has control over the use of those? If the school decides to put in EV chargers and they want those EV chargers to hit the batteries instead of creating a higher demand charge on their own utility bill, do they have access to the batteries, or is that simply in control of the utility?
It's actually in our control, and our partners' control, if you will. And yes, the utility also has some access to that control. The school district does not have control of that, the way that it's metered.
Okay. And drainage. So this area is where they park the buses. As I understand it, there's drainage in place. There's no evidence that there's an issue now. However, rain and snow fall, uniformly over the area. And now these panels will work to concentrate how precipitation comes to the earth. So what provisions are built into your design to deal with drainage and runoff from the panels?
Okay. Let's see, maybe I could pull up the stormwater management plan, which might be helpful visual.
So just looking at that cross section, are the panels actually level in those up and down rows?
Yep, so this is the dual slope nature of the system, right? That you have a module at 5 degrees east, and then you have this trough, and then you have a module at 5 degrees west, and then a crest, and then it repeats itself. And so at each trough location, there's what we call a mini gutter, and which is actually a patented design by our team, where we have these mini cross gutters that go at every trough location. And then we have cross gutters that go kind of as we place them, as we can strategically place them from the, I guess in this profile, it'd be to the east to the west. And so each one of those mini gutters would tie in to a larger gutter that then would be routed down the steel column and onto the pavement surface and into one of the existing catch basin areas. And so in our stormwater management plan that was provided, we have the delineation of the current existing drainage areas of the parking lot. I can kind of show this depiction. So we have this delineation of the current drainage areas of the parking lot that all route to different catch basin points.
That's great.
And then we have the proposed structure, and we can kind of customize our approach to, have a certain amount of water fall in a strategized location to mimic those existing conditions. And so we have several downspout locations that accomplish that. And we've demonstrated that we're within sort of a 5% tolerance of the existing conditions where, our engineers of record would deem that that's acceptable and has been for practice all across the Cape. And this same analysis was provided as part of the site plan review committee as well. So you can see here as we have these pink circles are actually our downspout locations to try and mimic those existing conditions.
So it's probably one of the best designs that I've seen for one of these canopy systems for drainage. However, won't that in a snow event hurt production the way that it's going to capture snow in each of those valleys?
Certainly a little bit, right? We install these types of dual slope canopies all in the actually in my neck of the woods up in Western New York as well, Eastern upstate New York. And yeah, we certainly lose some production in that, but the benefit of the system being that, it's safe for people to walk under, it's safe for cars to park under, that's taken into account within our yield calculations. And so it's worth it.
That's great. And then my last question is just about maintenance of the entire facility, all of the infrastructure that you're putting into place, whether it's, upkeep for aesthetics, from, events where nuisance pests, nest up or any of that. What's the term, who's responsible for maintenance? What's the term of that? And is there a dismantling bond?
Yes. So our operations and maintenance plan for stormwater and for the operation of the system as a whole is, under the control of DSD or the owner of the project entities, which is us, for the term of the lease. And so that operation and maintenance plan is going to be implemented by the leaseholder for the entirety of the lease period, which includes an annual site investigation to make sure the system is operating properly. And certainly, we're going to stay in touch with our customer throughout the entirety of the process so that there is an issue that we don't necessarily see by our remote monitoring devices, but is visualized by one of our customers on site. We're on call for those sorts of issues as well. As far as a decommissioning bond, that's listed in the lease agreement. The bond hasn't been issued to the school district at this point, but the bond amount is listed in the lease agreement. I believe it's Exhibit D.
That's great. That answers all my questions. Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Ward, do you have any questions?
Yes, I do. It's sort of a strange question, but I couldn't help it. Having walked through the facility and suddenly realizing the canopy over the buses. So if you can answer this quite strange question, I'm very familiar with the Venturi effect, and the Cape has a lot of wind. Is there any possibility that wind will flow between the canopy and the buses will cause an effect of basically applying extreme additional pressure on the roof that could cause a safety issue? That's it.
Yeah, no, that's actually a good question. And I did mention earlier that this design actually hasn't been done before by our team. And frankly, I don't think by anybody else either. In that this design, we actually do this design a lot, which is a dual slope. We call this our dual slope T design, as you know, it kind of looks like a T with the vertical rafters, and then the dual slope of the modules. We typically build we typically build 6 high systems, which we would have 6 modules across, or 8 high systems, or 8 modules across per foundation location, or per 1 column length. And this is a 10 high system that we've designed for this. And so our structural engineers have, kind of provided a more innovative solution here. And our partners at CBC, who are our custom steel fabricators and engineers, they have, sort of vetted this design and done some extra calculations to that effect. And so, it is possible.
What's possible?
to that this design is structurally, sound.
Yeah, because we're all familiar with things like the Galloping Gertie out west, where wind effects destroyed the bridge, and there's a few other issues in structural design that wind flow through various channels can cause effects. So it just looked like that was a possibility. So you're basically saying you think the calculations and the strengths of these things would basically prevent that.
Yeah, and I think too is that we have to take into account that this is not a closed system, right? So the force of that wind can, certainly leak out in areas that are, not completely airtight, if you will. One of those locations is, of course, in between where all these midi gutters are placed. The other location is between the support purlin itself and underneath the module edges, because they're tilted and the purlin is not. Things like that.
Thank you.
May I ask whether there is anyone present at this meeting who wishes also to speak in favor of this application? No positive response. Now, is there anyone present at the meeting wishing to speak in opposition to this application? No response. Is there anyone present at this meeting wishing to address the zoning board concerning the application in general?
Mr. Chairman, this is Jerry Mulligan.
Yes.
And you may feel free to rule me out of order, because the question I have really may be beyond our purview, and if you feel free that if you don't think it's appropriate to continue this, that's fine. I understand. But I go back to a comment, if I will, on the financing to Mr. Warnick. And is the price that the school is paying for electricity in any way dependent upon the success of this project in terms of how much electricity is generated, or is it a flat payment? Mr. Noah?
Jim, you might be able to answer that better than I can. I have an idea, but go ahead.
Yeah, we're going to be paying a flat payment for everything it produces. So if it doesn't produce enough to cover the use at the middle school, the electricity used, we'll pay the full price for that overage. But, and the price is fixed for 20 years. So we will not get any increases. Whatever it calculates out, once Eversource is done and calculate, we get their costs in because that's going to affect it. That's going to be it. If it starts out at 8 cents a kilowatt, that's what we're paying for 20 years. It won't increase.
So you're paying 8 cents per kilowatt of electricity that this
System produces.
the system produces. Oh, okay. And if it doesn't produce well, then you pay your regular market rate.
For anything above that.
Anything above that. Is there a minimum floor you're granted no matter how it performs? I mean, are you guaranteed a certain amount at 8 cents no matter what happens to the production?
They did give us estimates. Solar's not new anymore, so there's going to be pretty right on, how many kilowatts it's going to produce for the year. I have it on my own house, and actually I have more than it produces more than what they told me it would.
Right,
So,
but the school department is still liable for the success or failure of this project. I mean,
well, we have no, we are, but we have no skin in the game either. I mean, if we were putting out, $3 million to build it and it produced half of what they said, yeah, then we're in trouble. But because we have no payments up front, if it produces half, we're going to be upset. It will complain, but I don't think CVEC has ever had a project that's been underperformed. How's that?
Right.
And they've been doing this is probably their 7th round of doing this.
6th, but yeah.
6th, okay.
Yep. And that has been our experience as well. I mean, we have incredible stake in this game that our system performs well, and we make our return, and our investors are happy and all that kind of stuff, and our customers are happy. And so, this thing is remotely monitored throughout the life of the project in order to meet those goals.
does the town have any bond beyond the construction period?
Just the decommissioning bonds.
Decommissioning bond?
Yep. There's a performance bond associated with a construction period, and then there's a decommissioning bond that I'm sorry, another member asked about earlier. Must have been Mr. Cole.
Yeah.
That there's a decommissioning bond at the end of the project life.
Yeah, but there's no operating bond though, or nothing. No. All right. Very good, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for that indulgence.
Thank you, Mr. Mulligan. I have refrained from restricting the questioning from any member of the board of the applicant in the interest of transparency and also understanding that the applicant came to the zoning board with a complete development, including the construction plans, and that although the zoning board does not have jurisdiction over the financial arrangements or the doings of the town, this was an appropriate time to have some of this information developed publicly. Now, let the record reflect that you are advised that General Laws, Chapter 48, Section 3 provides that no zoning ordinance or bylaw shall regulate or restrict the use of land or structures for educational purposes on land owned by the Commonwealth or any of its bodies politic. I reminded the board that we were faced with this situation recently, last year, with a proposal for improvements right at the Nauset Regional Middle School. I understand that the relief sought by the applicant on behalf of the town and the school is for coverage exceeding 4,000 square feet and possibly a variance for commercial use in the residential district. If the board should see fit, and there is evidence to support it, that the establishment of the work would be primarily connected with the educational purpose, that is the Nauset Regional Middle School, then the work would be exempt from the regulation and restrictions of the zoning bylaw. Accordingly, does anyone wish to, any members of my colleagues wish to discuss this proposition and ruling that I've just made?
I'd like to make a comment, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Tom.
You'll forgive my cynicism, but the company that's the largest asset manager in the world, and our friends at Eversource, are not humanitarian nonprofit organizations. And they are providing a benefit to the town that I think is substantial, an investment and a design that is well thought out. I, however, feel strongly that this is indeed a commercial enterprise in a residential zone, as well as the other purpose as defined primarily for educational purposes. And I have not, and it's not within our purview to ask for a disclosure of the, if you will, cost benefit analysis or risk analysis that the investors in this project are hoping to reap. But I would at least like the record to reflect that we are not naive about this, and that there is indeed a commercial and self-serving benefit to the investors and to the project and to the project's owners. I am complete, sir. Thank you. And nothing more need be said. Perhaps the record just reflecting that is sufficient.
And so the record will reflect that, Mr. Todd. If there's no further discussion, then I will close the hearing for the taking of evidence and entertain a motion that
I think Mr. Evers had a point to make.
Mr. Evers.
Yeah, I was just, I understand you're using the state guidelines. But
Yes,
but under 16440-2 in our bylaws, educational, municipal, and religious uses, it says dimensional and other requirements for education, municipal, and religious uses, minimum lot size, frontage, lot coverage, yard dimensions, and requirements for drainage and plantings for education, municipal, and religious uses shall conform to the standards within the districts they are located.
okay, let's take a look. Take a look at the statute. All right, then under those circumstances, the commercial, the commercial use, that is that portion of the work that would provide energy to the regional middle school would be, could not be regulated. However, the 4,000 square foot coverage would be. Is that what your point is, Mr. Evans?
Yeah, that's why I sent them for a special
Okay.
permit for being over the
Very well.
4,000.
And in that case, the motion would be something like this. That the board issue a special permit based on the evidence that the building coverage, we have this, excuse me, is listed as 15,000. Excuse me.
32,270. If you look at the screen, Mr. Chairman,
32,275 square feet. Be specially permitted, although the coverage, building coverage and all would exceed 4,000 square feet. It would be added in as to the coverage already at the regional middle school, which is something like 125,000 square feet, if I remember correctly. And that the otherwise, that the establishment of the work as defined in the application is accessory to the educational use of the North Regional Middle School. That's the motion. I think we can enter.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, I support the permit request, but I really question whether it's ancillary to the elementary school, the educational process. This is more of a public works project for the town. I mean, would you consider tying into the sewer system for the school? Would you consider that part of the elementary, the educational process rather? Is anything associated with the school under the rubric then of being educational? This is really about paying for electricity for the school. I wouldn't see it as educational. I think it's more of the public works for the town.
I understand that, but look at it this way. We're talking about the use. It really doesn't make any difference what the town is or isn't paid, but the use is to provide electricity and energy to primarily to the school.
Right, but there's
That's got to
education.
be, and therefore the board could determine, or may not, once we vote, that that's an accessory use.
Yeah, I'll go along with that. I can't imagine a situation where they'd be doing something on the property that wasn't associated with the school, but whether it's an educational use or not is I think a stretch, but.
I think that's correct. I do believe that's correct. Once that school went up, notwithstanding chapter 48, section 3, I really don't think that the zoning board had any business deciding what it ought, what the town could or couldn't do with that land.
All right,
Maybe that's too broad a thought, but it's certainly an educational use. Or we could determine that, we could find that. By that, I mean, providing electricity to the school.
Yeah, I'll go along with that. I think your preface there has sort of convinced me that once they put it up, it's on school property and the school board determines what's going to be done on that property, then the call is theirs, not ours. I can buy that.
I don't want to really think of an analogous type of work, but there is a lot of other things that could be done on that land, which would be really doesn't need the permitting from this zoning board.
Right, right.
I mean,
I'll make that motion then, Mr. Chairman.
very well. Then is there a second on the motion?
I'll second and ask for a discussion on one point.
Very well. There is a second. Now we'll have discussion on the,
Just a point of clarification. So the main relief here is coverage, and did I understand Mr. Evers correctly that he sees this as a roof structure, that the solar panel canopy is being treated the same as if it were an asphalt shingle roof?
Yes.
And have we considered it that way in other applications? And is that sort of a precedent or a definition that we want for solar canopies?
That's a good question. We haven't come across it before.
I'm asking not because I necessarily have an opinion, but I'm curious what others think about that.
my thinking of it is, generally speaking, we run across these types of structures, but they've generally been connected with the building itself. Does not connect with the school building. However, due to the magnificence, that by magnificence, I mean the size, the area, the total area of the canopy, then I think that we can fit it in to a special permit with the findings that are based on the evidence we've heard.
Okay.
It would have been Matt, I think it would have been a lot easier if it were connected to the school, but it isn't that. It's a canopy for the purpose of collecting solar energy, not for the purpose of providing relief from the elements for the buses that are parked underneath it.
I'm just trying to think of other examples that this might trigger. So if somebody has 3,500 square feet of coverage on their property and they want to do a 500 square foot solar canopy, we're going to trip them over 4,000. We're going to have another application for that. Or conversely, if some other commercial property wants to put up, a 10,000 square foot covered area as a pavilion party space that doesn't have solar on it, is this become a comparison? Well, the school could cover 32,000 feet. Why can't I? I don't know. I think I'm satisfied with the reason, and I certainly think it falls under a special permit and not variance.
No question about that, but the situations that you just posited were not town-owned land on which a school was located. It was a commercial venture. People are going to have, an applicant would have to come before the board and satisfy us.
Mr. Chairman?
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Waugh?
Yes, it sounds like we can handle this one as we are, which is good. But another option might be, as a result of this, the suggestion is made to the planning board to come up with regulation that can be handled in the future. Similar as to what happened, for example, when windmills first came. It may be that it's necessary to come up with rules, regulations for solar panels in the future.
That could have happened, actually, if the generation of the energy in this case was a windmill put on that soccer field. Anyway, it wasn't. Is there any further discussion on the motion as made and seconded? Then this is a remote meeting. I will call for a vote. All those in favor, Mr. Marnick? Aye. Ms. Eckholt?
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan?
Yes,
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
And Mr. Waugh?
Yes,
The motion carries unanimously. I will write the appropriate opinion.
Mr. Chairman, could I have a point of personal privilege to thank the members of the board? I thought we were exemplary tonight. I learned things from my fellow members. I was inspired by their thoughtfulness and range of knowledge. The presentation was great. The help we get from Stacy is fantastic. I always want to offer our gratitude to her. I have one slightly inappropriate request. As everybody on the call knows, the members are welcome to comment at any time. And we have not heard from Ms. Eckholt or Ms. Van Giesen. And while it's not necessary, I always appreciate knowing their perspectives on the matters that we discussed. And so if it's not inappropriate, I would ask you to invite their comments, sir. Otherwise, I'm going to shut up.
Perhaps I should have been more explicit. I've always allowed comments by any member of our colleagues without restriction. And if Ms. Eckholt and Ms. Van Giesen have any comments, then I think we all should hear them. If either of them want to make any remarks now, that would be wonderful.
I'll just say this, that I'm not an engineer, not familiar at all with solar projects, and I'm not a lawyer. So the issue of do you have to give a special permit because the coverage is over 4,000 is one I leave to the lawyers on the group, and the issues or questions about the solar project and its design and how it's funded, I leave to other members as well. So my role tonight was to listen carefully and vote according to what I heard and understood. So I'm fine. I didn't need to make any comments.
Thank you, Ms. Eckholt. Ms. Van Giesen, do you have any remarks to make?
No remarks, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Very well. And I concur with Ms. Eckholt. I thought that the special permit application was thorough and very technical. I learned a great deal about the nitty-gritty of establishing solar panels in a canopy. And I leave that and with, generally speaking, with the other people, not only on the zoning board, but also town employees and officials who would understand it a whole lot better than myself. And I do appreciate the application being so thorough and explained so clearly to me and all of us tonight.
Mr. Chairman, again, with apologies for time, knowing that we're going to entertain a motion to dismiss and knowing that you can't see that Mr. Evers has something he also wants to contribute.
I'm sorry. I just got a text from home. I'm going to have to leave the meeting. I just wanted to apologize.
Thank you, Mr. Evers.
Fabulous. As
Thanks for
always.
you.
Thank you.
Good luck at home.
Thank you.
I would just like to return briefly to Mr. Waugh's suggestion that this board, in response to this experience as responsible citizens, advance some sort of summary inquiry, proposal, suggestion, urging of the, I don't know who, but I would think the Board of Selectmen, frankly, right to the source, but I don't know these things well in this town, but that I would work with Mr. Waugh on the language of that if he was so inclined. I'm complete.
Very well. And as a matter of education, generally speaking, the way that the zoning bylaw is amended is that after discussion at the zoning bylaw task force, which consists of members from the zoning board of appeals, the select board, the planning board, the town planner, articles are generated and eventually end up with consideration at the town meeting. There have been occasions where I have proposed as a result of discussions and provocation by colleagues on the zoning board with problems which need to be dealt with by the town, and I've presented them to the zoning bylaw task force, and they've eventually bubbled up and ended up at town meeting. So that's the procedure. There's maybe a shorter way of doing that, Bruce, but that's one good way of doing it.
I would rule myself out of order here. When we get to new business, I'll raise it again. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I wasn't thinking of new business tonight.
No, no problem, sir. No problem.
I was thinking of a motion to adjourn,
I
unless,
agree.
So moved.
very well. Is there a second?
Second,
That all those in favor? Aye, and that could be done by acclamation. Thank
Aye.
you for your help, members of the
Aye.
board.
Great work tonight.